Welcome to our Sound for Video session, everybody. Thanks for joining us. It is the 26th of July, 2020, and we have a question and answer session today. We have a couple things that we're going to do in addition to that, a little bit of news that we're going to cover, and we also have a microphone demonstration that we're going to do here. So let's switch on over to our agenda and take a look. First of all, wanted to give you an update on the ATEM sound course. We did get some work in on that this week, which is great. We got our first 4 segments done, so we're aiming to have that one out and available by the end of August. So just in I guess that's just 5 weeks from now. So that's our goal. I'm gonna have to take a little bit of time off from the day job to make that happen. So hopefully we can stick to that time frame and get that out to you. Daniel was kind enough to send over a little bit of news. Zoom makes the F control, which is a little control surface for their F series of recorders and mixers. And it looks like there's a bit of a price drop. So it used to run $349 and it looks like it's down to $299. So I've got a link down in the description if you're interested in that. And one thing that Daniel said was maybe that means there's something else coming out from Zoom. And I don't know. Well, if I did know, I couldn't say because they would have requested me to be under embargo, but that's good news. So $50 off of that is not a bad deal. So I will say, just as a kind of note that, excuse me, it's a pretty good fit for the Zoom F4 and the F8N and the F8. It's not quite as good a fit for the F6. It works, but it's a little bit funky when you're in 32-bit float mode. So just so you're aware, not the perfect fit there. All right, let's take a look at, let's switch back over to the main cam here. I want to show you, talk about something here that I've actually had for a long time. And there's a story behind this. So Synco is a Chinese company. They make a couple of microphones now. This one is the Mic D2. And they sent this to me probably 6 to 9 months ago. I can't remember. It's been a while. And I did not review it initially because what happened was, as I was getting ready to do the review, my friend Bandrew from the Podcastage channel had tweeted something out. Evidently someone had tweeted over to him that when they bought their Synco D2 mic, they got a handwritten note in it, and the handwritten note came from the reseller, which incidentally, the reseller of this mic brand, Synco, it's a sibling company to Synco. And one of the things that they did was there was a handwritten note in it, and actually several people had reported this as well, that basically said, if you give us a 5-star review on Amazon, and very, very directly, 5-star review, we will give you $40. So we'll send you $40 or whatever the amount was. It was some amount of money. And so I decided I don't really like the sound of that. That seems pretty dodgy to me. So I wrote them back and said, hey, what's going on with this? And they said, yeah, it was a problem with our sibling company. And I said, okay, well, I don't really think I'm going to review this. Do you want to take the mic back? And they never got back to me. So but then I kind of put a question out to the larger audience, and they said, well, go ahead and review it and just tell the story. So there's the story. And I'm not going to do a full review, but we'll go ahead and turn this on here. And in fact, let me go ahead and pull that up. So thank you for the super chats. Looks like Rob and from Vincent as well. Let's get the snacks rolling here. Hope everyone had a great weekend. Likewise, thank you, Vincent. Thank you, Rob, for that as well. All right, what I have to do here is I'm going to pull up my console app. So I'm running these just to review the signal chain here. These are both running through my Universal Audio Apollo audio interface, and that's going line out to my camera here, which is the Canon C200, which is then streaming via HDMI, both the video and audio, into the ATEM Mini Pro, which is streaming directly out into the internet to YouTube. So I'm going to switch over mics here, and I'm going to cross my fingers that everything works okay. So stand by here. Okay, we're having a routing issue there. So
There it is.
I'm back on my Earthworks right now. All right, I'm gonna have to work on that a little bit. There's the console app. I'm gonna do a video on the Universal Audio console app at some point. It is routing is potentially complex, no matter where you do it. But once you get your mind around it, it generally works okay. But this console app works in, oh, I know what I need to do. I know exactly what's wrong. Okay. Okay. Send this to Q. Thanks for your patience here, people. Hard to see when you have a light right in your face. Okay, we're going to try this again. Switching over. Standing by. Are we getting anything, Emma?
A little bit.
We're getting a little bit. Is it coming in now?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a better sense. So I'm now talking through the Synco D2. It is a shotgun microphone. It has a it's another 416 clone. In fact, when they first contacted me, I was a little one thing they told me is that we think it's just as good as the Sennheiser MKH 416. We want you to test it and do a review. We'll send it to you for free. And I was like, well, okay. With a lot of skepticism. It actually sounds pretty decent from what I can tell. Let's go ahead and put this on here. There we go. Okay. Yeah, it's not a horrible sounding mic, but I felt like from a marketing standpoint, that was a little bit of a strange, I understand what they're trying to do. I get it. But in any case, this is what it sounds like. And there are a couple things that are kind of unique about it. This, and I think you've probably seen this for those of you that have seen other reviews. I know Mike Delgadio did a review. Alan at SoundSpeeds did a review. This is kind of a velour material, which not something I've seen before. It seems like it's a little denser than the typical foam covers that you see on microphones. So I don't know what that's doing for the sound. Let's go ahead and pull it off and see if my sibilance gets a little bit more prominent. One moment. Okay, there we are. We're back. All right, and now here is without. I'm hearing definitely some higher frequency content here once we take this guy off. So it's a kind of an interesting material. It is still a foam, but it's got this sort of velour finish. How would you describe that? Fuzzy. So yeah, definitely a different material. It seems a little denser than you would typically see. And I definitely am hearing a bit more high frequency content. So let me go ahead and pop that back on. I'm going to mute for just a moment. Okay, we're coming back online. Emma said that this actually feels like the outside of a cattail, that really kind of fine, soft texture. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure how to call it. So, all right. So there's a little sample for you. I don't know what else. If you have any questions about this particular mic, let me know. It is not an RF bias mic like the MKH 416 is, so it's not going to compete on that front if you have to go work in super humid environments. It would be my guess. I don't know. Although Alan did take it into a shower, and it seemed to work okay. And he's in Atlanta, or the Atlanta area, so that's already pretty humid there. So he didn't run into any issues, so that's actually a good sign. So there is a listen to the Synco D2. And in fact, I will say this, one more thing. I will say this is pretty nice. It did come with this sort of semi-hard case. And the microphone clip was a little funky. You have to basically stretch it a long way to get it around the microphone. So that was a little bit weird, but it did. It strangely came with this little XLR cable with really thin cable, but a very short one as well. Not sure. Maybe that's so that on your boom pole you can get it down to the longer cable. I don't know. and a little 5/8 to 3/8 inch adapter. So there you go, Synco D2. I have to be honest, I don't have a need for this microphone. I have a lot of other microphones. If one of you want to, if this would be useful to one of you, and you're willing to pay shipping, I'm happy to give it to you. So if you want to just send me an email, curtis@learnlightandsound.com. Whoever emails first, I guess, can take possession of this fine Synco mic D2. And in addition to that, I'm going to switch back to my other mic here. One moment, please. Okay, hear that one come online? That makes a little noise. We do have another microphone that needs a new home. 1 second. All right, for those of you in need of an indoor boom microphone, somebody that does a lot of work indoors, we do have the Sinal SCI 3212. And so if you want to email, whoever emails me first on this one and is willing to pay shipping, happy to ship that over to you as well. So let's get you guys armed with everything you need to make some good sound. All right. Could you please put Mark Randall's comment on the screen? Mark is saying, still waiting for that silver microphone to flash and Men in Black neutralize him one day. It could happen, Mark. You never know. It looks like things are pretty late for Mark, so he's got some pretty spicy comments today. So thank you for that, Mark. Thanks for sharing. All right, let's shift back over to the agenda and see what we've got going over here. It's time to jump into the question and answer, so let's do that. First of all, this is actually not so much a, this is a solution that Phil found. He actually asked this question a few weeks ago, and we wanted to kind of circle back. He was kind enough to give us the solution that he eventually found. So he was having an issue where he was getting noise when he was monitoring from his MixPre 6, and he had a couple of microphones. He had a Deity Connect as well as a boom mic, it sounded like. In any case, he was getting this kind of phantom noise that came and went, and it was pretty messy. So his solution was, he was powering the MixPre 6 and the Deity Connect from the same USB charging bank. As soon as I put them both on separate power banks, the problem completely disappeared. So it looks like some sort of ground loop back through the USB charging bank or battery bank. It's the Anker 20,000 milliamp hour battery that Sound Devices recommends. So that was pretty interesting. So thanks for that, Phil, for sharing. So that's definitely something that definitely to keep in mind. So if you are running into those kind of issues, definitely see if you can separate your, it's interesting. Usually, a lot of times I've run into you can actually run into interconnect issues or these kinds of issues as well if you're using two separate power sources. So you have to kind of be flexible and go back and forth and figure out which one's going to solve the problem. So again, Phil, thanks so much for sharing that. And if anyone else is experiencing that issue, hopefully this is helpful for you as well. Or everyone will experience this at some point if you record audio long enough. So, all right, Tom D actually has a couple of different items. So first of all, he has a question about using Kino. Has anyone used Kino? And if so, what do you think? Has anyone devised a workflow for using Kino, ultimately going into Final Cut Pro 10 or another nonlinear editor and pluralize? Yes, I can say, Tom, I have used Kino. The reason I originally got it was that when I got the Panasonic GH5, it has one of its codecs is a 422 10-bit all-I codec, and so it wasn't something that the nonlinear editors at the time could read, or at least the operating system couldn't play it back. So I used Kino at that point to transcode it, and that's really all I used it for. It was a nice app. It's a little bit on the pricey side, but it works nicely, and I've been very happy with it for that purpose. I don't know exactly what you're trying to use it for, but if you do need to transcode, it does a nice job. And so I was transcoding from that all-I format, all-I codec into ProRes, and then I would edit in ProRes. So that's an extra step. Nowadays, I can just bring that straight into that footage and that codec I can bring directly into Final Cut Pro, and it reads it fine, no problem. So the operating system still can't play it, but the NLEs can. Actually, let's go back on that one a little bit. Then you ask about Pluralize. So it's been a while since I used Pluralize, but this is what I can say from my perspective. This is what it does. And actually, I think this is what basically that this is at least one of the workflows that Tentacle Sync Studio does as well, is that if you drop all of your footage and all of your audio clips into it, what it does is it syncs them up on a timeline. And then you can export that timeline as an XML and then open that up in your video editing app, your nonlinear editor. That's one workflow. In Tentacle Sync Studio, and I thought you could do this in Pluralize as well, another option you have is actually re-encoding the file to include the audio. So, you had a couple of different ways you could go about it. So you didn't necessarily have to export a timeline in that case. You just basically recontainerized the video clips with the synced audio to it. So if that works better for your workflow, Tom, that might be something to consider. I actually like the XML files because then it lays everything out in chronological time the way it was shot, and then you can just move the clips around as you do your edit. So it's a little bit different than pulling everything out of bins and putting them on the timeline in the order that makes sense for the edit. But instead what you do is you take everything was basically already on the timeline and you move them around or delete them based on what you need to do to tell your story. So that was my workflow with that. And you kind of go on to say, any thoughts on Pluralize more generally? I'm finding it odd that after dropping untouched files into it, I'm forced to bring them into Final Cut Pro 10 as a timeline, which seems backward for a normal Final Cut Pro 10 workflow. And yeah, so that's basically what I was saying before. Instead of pulling everything out of the bin and putting it on the timeline, it's already on the timeline. So if that doesn't work for you, I thought that Pluralize had this ability to re-encode the files, and it doesn't mess. It's not changing the video encoding itself. It's just putting the synced audio in the files and saving them separately from the originals. So I know Tentacle Sync Studio can do that. I thought Pluralize could too, but it's been a long time since I saw that. So, all right, let's see here. We have a question that came in here. Let's just hop on this really quickly here. What do you think of that Sonal mic that is looking for a new home? I actually did a review over on my main channel. So the Sonal SCI 3212. For its price, it's about a $99 microphone. Last I checked, it's decent. It's decent, I would say. You're probably not gonna shoot a major Hollywood film with it. It does produce some self noise, but it was actually decent. I think the voicing on it was a little bit mid-range focused, so you'll probably want to do a little bit of EQ for most voices. But I would just wait till you record a voice and then bring it in and apply the EQ as necessary. So it wouldn't be my first choice as far as a live stream mic for my voice, but it could fit other voices a little bit better. So I think I think $100 is a fair price for that. Let's put it that way. So thanks for the question there. Okay, let's go to Tom's next item here. Has anyone been able to use the Deity HD-TX as a preamp audio card input to bring an XLR or lav mic into a digital audio workstation on a Mac? He's using a MacBook Pro. Deity touted this as a firmware 2.0 feature, but it does not work with Catalina running on a 2019 MacBook Pro, and Deity did not post or answer my question about this on their Deity user Facebook page. Okay, let me just show you something here. Let's see here. So I actually got this out earlier today, Tom. Thanks for the question. I hadn't tested this yet. So when I originally reviewed the Deity HD-TX, which for those that are not familiar with it, it's a plug-on transmitter. And it also has a 3.5 millimeter input. So if you want to record a lavalier to this, transmit wirelessly a lavalier, or if in the United States, if you turn off the wireless, you can actually record to this. So that's cool. Anyway, what they did is in the 2.0 firmware, it can now act as a USB audio interface, they say. So I tested it. I will say this, it did work. I was able to get an XLR microphone into my Mac which is running Catalina. So I'm on an iMac here. And the thing that was a little bit unusual about it, though, was that it didn't seem to play back any audio out of the headphone jack while I was recording. And it was only recognized by the operating system as an input device, not as an output device. So it's not a traditional audio interface from the standpoint that, normally with an audio interface, you plug it in via USB and you can play back computer audio via the device itself. That did not seem to work on this. So with some caveats, I was able to get it to work. So I don't know, Tom, if you tried contacting Deity support directly, not their Facebook page, but I think they actually have an email address. Last I talked to Andrew from Deity, and I was actually in California in December, and we actually met up. He said that he was doing all of the support for Deity, so he should be able to help walk you through that. So if you haven't contacted them via email already, their email support, try that. It should work with your computer. So thanks very much. Whoa, you got a super chat? Wait a minute, people. Lauren, thank you for the super chat. By the way, all the super chats help Emma. She's, just so you're clear, everyone, I want to be very crystal clear about this. Emma gets paid for all this work she does. She's not just volunteering. And it also turns out, if you're interested to know, that some of the money that we make here on the channel, here and on the main channel, actually are paying for Emma's university education. So that's really good, right?
Yeah.
Did I misrepresent that in any way?
No.
She says no. So, so Lauren, thanks for that. Timothy, thank you also for your super chat there. And also Alex, it looks like, sent over a little super chat as well. So thanks everybody for that. Appreciate that. Okay. Oh, so Andre says something interesting here about the HD-TX as well. The new 2.0 firmware allows you to record to SD and transmit, but you need to have the 48-volt phantom power on. Is that true on the US version as well? That's interesting. So thanks for sharing that. I'll test that out and see what I get on this end as well. All right, let's head back over. I think Tom had some more questions. My goodness, thank you, Vincent. Looks like Emma's more popular than the sound part of the thing here. All right, Tom has one more here. Now, this is not so much a question, but actually Tom had some experience here and wanted to share. Learned the hard way. Answer to an unanswered question from a while back. Deity's non-locking 3.5mm to XLR adapter is not a workable professional adapter for any of my locking 3.5mm lavs, even with ample gaffer tape applied to it. Rode's locking 3.5mm to XLR adapter, that's the VXLR Plus as I understand it, price the same, USD $25, is a rock solid and works perfectly with the Deity WLAV Pro. So how do you say that, Emma? Is that chapeau?
Where are we looking?
Middle of the
chapeau.
Chapeau. To B&H Photo for crediting me for the Deity version, which I gently suggested they should not be selling. Any experience using these 3.5mm to XLR adapters successfully with Voice Technologies VT500 lavs? And has anyone successfully used Voice Technologies VT500 with the Deity Connect interview setup, both their normal and lav transmitter to HD-TX? Okay, so yes, let me just show this here. We have I think this is what you're talking about right here, Tom. This is the Deity 3.5mm. Let's see if it'll focus. It will focus. So we have 3.5mm on that side, XLR on this side. This also should be adapting the power, so from 48 volts down to plug-in power, 3 to 5 volts. I did test this today just to see, and I used a Voice Technologies VT500 and recording into my Apollo X6, it worked great, no problem. So I should say it worked. I did pick up some noise, so there was a bit of hiss that I don't believe I normally get with the Voice Technologies VT500, so I don't know if that's what you mean by it doesn't work. Technically it worked. would it be a good solution? I would probably not use this for that purpose. I think this was really designed to adapt their D3 Pro microphone to work with an XLR connection. So anyway, it worked. Wasn't a great result. Then I also put it into the HD-TX, the VT500, and that worked as well. There was some hiss there, but this system has some hiss in it. In fact, I would say we'll come back to the comments here in just a moment. I will say this system, I like this system, but it's not perfect. And the HD-TX was a little bit better than the body pack transmitters in my experience from the standpoint of self noise. I didn't get as much self noise with this plug-on transmitter as I seem to get with the body pack transmitters. But when I'm doing paid jobs, the amount of self noise that those body pack transmitters make, I'm generally not going to pull those out. They're not my first choice. And I know Deity Connect is a compelling option because it has that dual channel receiver. But man, if Wi-Fi is, 2.4 gigahertz is saturated where you're shooting, it's basically game over. I mean, you can increase the latency setting and hope for the best, and it might help in your situation, but that's the nice thing about UHF systems is you can just choose a different frequency. And I get it in the big urban areas like New York City, even that's no guarantee. But here in I'm usually shooting down in Salt Lake in Utah here. Usually I can find an open frequency without a problem down there on a UHF system. On one of these, if 2.4 gigahertz is saturated, it's basically game over. So just be careful and take that into consideration if you're looking at different scenes. Now, on the other hand, the Deity Connect system, plenty of people are using them and having, they're happy with the results. They're getting what they need. Where they're using them, that doesn't seem to be a problem in terms of 2.4 gigahertz saturation. So it really depends. So there's some thoughts there. All right, let's pop back into our questions here. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Tom, for sharing that as well. I appreciate that. So hopefully that information is useful to you. We do have some comments here in the chat that suggest that that it actually is working pretty well. That adapter, the Deity adapter, is working pretty well for them. So mixed results. So a little bit of everything, I guess. Next up from James is, have you tried the Pico Gear with the updated firmware? So for those who are not familiar, the Pico Gear is a small kind of consumer-oriented wireless system. And it's kind of unique from the standpoint that the transmitter and the microphone are both in this one tiny little system. And I would show you, but I actually gave mine away because I gave it to someone who needed it more than I did. So unfortunately, James, I have not used the latest firmware, and I'm curious if what that changed. The challenge from my point of view with the Pico Gear was it was a really clever system. I liked the receiver. It was overall, it was a pretty interesting system. It was a dual channel receiver. The microphones were really small, so really useful for, just kind of walk-up interviews. You could easily and very quickly clip that to somebody's shirt. It was a much smaller transmitter than the Wireless Go, so it wasn't as imposing. The problem was the mic sounded pretty awful to me. There wasn't a ton of dynamic range, and they sounded really mid-range focused. You could EQ some of that out and get a pretty decent result. And I think I did talk to somebody who had, 2 or 3 of them running at the same time. And once they started running the third kit, so once they got past 4 microphones, I think they started running into a lot of dropout issues. And again, this is a 2.4 gigahertz consumer wireless system again. So anyway, and so no, I have not tried the updated firmware. I'm curious what the new, what the firmware has added. A lot of people, and in fact, I just see right here from IAC, and I hope I didn't say that wrong, but it has been out of stock for a long, long time, so I don't even know if it's available. So that can be a challenge to even get your hands on it. But I'm curious, James, if you have, and if you've had some good experience with it, what the new firmware has brought. I'm curious to hear that. So, All right, let's go back and let's take a look at the chat. Here's a good one from Peter. Was Tom concerned about the fact that the deity was non-locking, so easier to disconnect? That's a fair point, yes, because the deity is non-locking, and so you could easily pull that out. And in fact, with the locking, let me just pull out here, the Voice Technologies VT500 has a fairly substantial 3.5 millimeter locking mechanism. Bad mic technique, apologies. It left enough room, it pulls back enough so you can actually insert it fully. But yeah, you could easily pull that out. That could be a problem, potentially. So good point, Peter. Thanks for that. All right. Let's take a run. Incidentally, if you do have a question, if you wouldn't mind putting @CurtisJudd audio, that'll make it a little easier for Emma to find that and pull those up here. But let's go ahead and get some more questions up on the screen for us. No questions? What? People, we have 29 minutes. We need to start talking. I'm going to put that away there. Oh, Ike. Ike, okay, we got it. Thank you for the pronunciation help there. Appreciate that. And I hope you're, if you are experiencing some inability to sleep, I hope that the session helps put you to sleep. Vincent did say something interesting here. Interesting how the mics step over each other on 2.4 gigahertz. It can. Oh, actually pop Vincent's up on the screen there if you would. 2-wire, tie them together. That probably goes away. Quick, easy tip. Interesting. Something I've never tried, Vincent. So very interesting on the 2.4 gigahertz systems. We'll have to check that, to give that a try sometime. Slav Guns, thanks for joining us here tonight. Let's go ahead and go back through and let's get anything. Oh, here we go. We've got another one here. Oh, another super chat from TD. Thank you for that. Rob sent an email. So Rob, thanks for that. We'll pull that up there. I don't know if you were maybe in the running there for one of those microphones, but let's go ahead and pull that up and see. I won't read it out loud. But I love getting mail from you guys, so we're going to check that out and see what Rob has to say. Loading Gmail, stand by. Okay. Oh, Rob actually does have. Rob sent. Yes, I remember from last week we talked about a. And I apologize, Rob. I'm not actually equipped to show this, but what we'll do is, so we talked background music information. We talked last week about potentially doing an evaluation, I guess, or maybe a review of your live stream setup, just so that we could potentially, as a community, provide some input and maybe help you kind of refine some things. I don't have a way to put it up on the screen here, do I? I don't, no. Unfortunately, but we will get that. I'll take a look at it this week and we'll definitely put it on the agenda for next week. I apologize that we didn't get that ahead of time. You did send it a while ago. Anyway, we'll get that next week. I'm excited to do that. Thank you so much for sending that over, and I'm excited to take a look at that. So, all right, we do have a question. Why we now have a wire tie fund for XLR. Okay, very good. Thank you for that, Vincent. And here's a lighting question in our sound for video session, so we'll go ahead and go with that. Is there anything budget-oriented to measure SSI of lights? Well, SSI is a relatively new metric. I am not aware of something that's more budget-oriented. Unfortunately, I have and the reason I have it is because I do these light reviews, but I have the Seikonic C800. That's a $1,500 spectrometer. It's not cheap. So I'll keep my eyes out and let you know if I see something less expensive. I think that there were some, I'll have to ask my friend Jacob. He actually, he kind of pieced together a colorimeter, and I don't know if a colorimeter would be capable of doing this. I think it would, but a colorimeter that you would normally put on your computer screen to calibrate the screen, he actually found some open source software where he could connect that to a phone, and then he could use that as a way to measure at least CRI and TLCI. But I imagine that they've probably updated that. And this was a few years ago. This is probably 3 or 4 years ago that he was doing that. So I wonder if they've updated that. I'll check in with him and see if I can find out more information for you. But that would get you into, I think those colorimeters you can buy, they're still not dirt cheap, but I think $150. So it's a lot less than $1,500. But I'll check in with him and see if there is another way to do that. It's a good question. All right, next question. Do you know if Zoom is coming out with a new recorder mixer? Just a price drop on the F8N while researching the F control. Oh, good to know that the F8N is coming down in price as well. I don't know. Well, I could say, let me say this. I do have periodic conversations with Zoom North America. So I had a call today or last week with Mr. Green at Zoom, but anything that we talked about is under embargo, so I can't talk about that. Here's what I can say. I would say that if you need a Zoom F8N, I would buy a Zoom F8N. I guess that's what I'll say, and we'll leave it at that. So, okay, let's go to the next question. If the Aperture P300C RGB light you reviewed on the main channel today is looking for a new home, let me know. I will certainly let you know. I will say this, that shipping on that one will not be cheap because that thing is it's a pretty heavy light. It's a pretty cool light, but it's also a pretty heavy one, and definitely I will let you know. So thanks for that. All right. Lloyd, did you find the self noise better for the Deity Connect with a higher grade lob? Sorry, no adapter or plug-on questions. No, that's a fair question. I did use a Senken COS 11D. I tested the Voice Technologies VT500, and I'm trying to think if I tested any others. Those were the two that I tested. Now, the Senken COS 11D is a classic. I mean, there are so many production mixers out there using that one. And Lloyd, I got the same self-noise issues with those as with the included lavalier mic. So it really appears to be some self-noise that's generated somewhere in the wireless system itself as opposed to the microphone, from what I can tell. So that was the unfortunate thing. All right. Next up from Art, I'm having some challenge with the Zoom F4 as an audio interface with the ATEM Mini. Sub out to mic input. Just connect through the computers via USB. ATEM doesn't recognize. Okay, so just to confirm, Art, when you go out of the F4, the sub out on the F4, do you come into the ATEM Mini and have you switched it to line level? And I'm curious what the results have been when you've done that. If you leave it on mic level, it's probably going to blow out unless you've attenuated the output level on the F4. But ideally, what you would do is leave the output fader at 0 on the F4, switch the ATEM Mini to line level input, and hopefully you'd get a pretty clean signal that way. So that's the first thing I would check. If you do have to end up using the F4 as an audio interface, you're going to have to use a streaming app like, if you're using OBS, for example, you can apply an offset, an audio offset. Not my favorite way to work, but it works generally, as long as your camera is pretty stable in terms of its output latency. But I would try that the first thing. I would go first into the ATEM Mini directly. Or another thing you can do is take the audio directly from the F4 into your camera, and then sync is not an issue. It's just a matter of getting your levels calibrated between the F4's output and the input on your camera. So hopefully that helps, Art. Thanks for the question. Okay. Rory, do you have a view on using SonarWorks during sound editing? So if I'm not mistaken, SonarWorks is basically the room EQ app. Let me just confirm here. Yeah, it's Studio Monitor Calibration. I haven't used it, first of all, so let me disclaim that first. When I have talked with a variety of people who are acousticians, it's interesting. The opinions vary pretty widely on this. Some people say it is the best thing that's ever happened in mixing in decades, and other people say it's complete rubbish and it doesn't solve the problem at all. I probably sit somewhere in the middle there. I think I mean, I don't know. Again, this is not coming from experience, but I think it is still, I don't think you can not treat your room acoustically with putting in broadband traps and expect SonarWorks to give you the truth in terms of what you're trying to edit. So I think there's still going to be very much a need for the acoustic treatment. Now, obviously, we're all working in constrained spaces. Well, most of us are working in rooms that have been repurposed to do mixing as opposed to being a bedroom or whatever they happen to be. This is basically a spare, this is the size of a typical household bedroom here. It's an office. It was originally set up as an office, but now we're now using it to do mixing as well. And it's got some issues. It's definitely got some issues. And I have, I worked with GIK Acoustics. We had an acoustician. I sent them some Room EQ Wizard tests that we had done in the room. Sent them, photos and dimensions of the room, and they put together a treatment plan for me, and that's what we ended up installing here. And it helped a lot, but it didn't solve everything. And it's not perfect, but I think it's good enough for what I'm doing. And I guess at some point I should probably try SonarWorks. I don't know. I certainly wouldn't have the means to scientifically evaluate it. Oh, well, maybe I could. I guess I've got the measurement microphone. I got Room EQ Wizard. I guess I could do that. But in any case, those are my fairly feeble thoughts on SonarWorks. I'm curious if you've used it and what your experience has been as well. So by all means, put that in the chat if you're willing to share. All right. I have, let's see, to film a documentary scene in a passenger airplane cabin using the C300 Mark II and Deity S Mic II. Should I add a lav? What other tips for noise do you have? Wow. Is it going to be flying at the time? So I guess I don't know. I would get that DDS Mic 2 off the camera, first of all, and get it over boomed over the person that's going to be the people or the person that's going to be talking. I would add a lavalier as well, if you can. So just give yourself as many options in post as you possibly can. I would have a sound operator if you can, just because each of you have a job to do, and it's hard to do all of them at the same time. If at all possible, it'd be ideal to have another person. But if not, at the very least, I would add a lavalier, especially if that S Mic 2 is going to be stuck on the camera and you're the only one that's going to be there. Definitely get a lav as well. They will be in flight? Okay, yeah. Whew. Yeah, and are you operating solo? An A330, so a big jet. Will you have anyone there that can operate sound? Just waiting here. There's a little bit of latency in the chat. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it would be a bit of a challenge. But on the other hand, I mean, you don't want it to sound like you're in a recording studio. So, it is a documentary film after all. I cannot bring crew. I will have 4 hours notice before he gets released and deported. Okay. Then yeah, I would bring a lavalier microphone, and the shotgun mic. Absolutely yes on the lavalier mic then. So you'll be there solo. Whew, yeah, okay. Get a lavalier microphone and test the heck out of that thing. Get good at getting it placed on somebody so that you can, make it happen as quickly as possible. It sounds like a once in a lifetime kind of shot. So bring a backup too, if you can. So rent if you need to, but I would bring a backup and I would get really used to the microphone that you're going to be using. Make sure you have a good handle on placement, and best of wishes. That sounds like a lot of fun and a little hairy at the same time. All right. Let's see. In your opinion, how good is the noise canceling plugin on the MixPre Mark IIs, and is it good value? Actually, it's interesting. Michael Wynn just put a video up yesterday over on YouTube. If you're not familiar with Michael Wynn, he's a production sound mixer in Atlanta. He has a YouTube channel. I think it's under his own name, Michael Wynn, Wynne. And he talked a little bit about using that. So here's my, and I actually have a very similar opinion to his, and that is that it's a useful tool, but it is merely a tool in a toolbox. It is not, you should not skip doing the other things that we have been doing for years to make cleaner sounding recordings and rely instead on the noise assist. But it is an additional tool that can potentially help under certain circumstances. For narrative film, it's probably not as useful for narrative film, but for maybe documentaries where you don't have anywhere you can go, actually noise assist would be potentially helpful on the airplane. So I would apply just a little bit, 2 or 3 dB of attenuation, not a whole ton beyond that, and I would only apply it to the mix, not to the isolated channels. So I would still want to give myself the option in post to have those unaffected or unprocessed isolated channels. So is it good value? It really depends on what you're doing. I think for my corporate work, if I've got to set up a live stream for the CEO or one of the other executives, and I have done everything I can, I've talked to the facilities people to turn off the white noise generators, asked them if they can. Usually they can't turn off the air conditioning, so that's that's a losing battle. If one of the rooms is located in the building that I work in, is by a very busy road, sometimes it's really noisy on that one side of the building. If we've done everything we possibly can and we're still having noise issues, then I might pull it out. And again, that's for a live stream. If I'm doing a pre-recorded thing, I know generally we can finagle something like moving to a different room. We can spend a little more time on it. So in those cases, I would be less likely to use it. So I think it is good value, but I think it's good value in the right circumstances. And it's one tool amongst many, and it's not my first tool that I would choose. So I would definitely, if you don't have sound blankets, people, I'm going to preach, but if you don't have sound blankets, you need to invest in sound blankets before you invest in noise assist. And you need to, get out your powers of persuasion to talk to the people in charge of the building to do whatever you need to do within reason to get a quieter environment to record in. So it's a good question, and I'm glad you asked it. All right. Do you have any experience with Bandrew's new toy, the Neumann U67? He says he is now broke. No, I have not used a U67, although there's some people here that may have used it. Lloyd, have you ever used a U67? Anyone else out there? Vincent, have you? I have not, but no, I would love to, but I have not. I think a U47 might be more interesting as well. And then, of course, there's always the U87, which is a classic. So, all right. I'm going to talk to someone at True Audio in Los Angeles about getting a sound bag setup, recorder, receivers, batteries, camera hop, etc. What may I expect for budgeting? Ooh, okay. Well, that depends on how many channels of wireless you need. The wireless is going to take the price of that up. That's kind of the biggest variable. I guess another thing too is have you decided on which mixer you're going to go with? How many input channels do you need? So there are a lot of. It can range anywhere from a bag setup for most jobs. I think you could probably get something with either a Zoom F8 or a MixPre. I'd say you could probably get started with something in the $2,000 range. but I think for a lot of cases, you're probably going to end up more. Now, if you're talking about something like an 888 plus 6 channels of Pro Wireless, you're looking at 15,000 probably, is my guess. Even 6 channels of wireless is probably even more than that. So, I mean, it really kind of depends on what you're aiming for. So, if the number of channels is probably one of the biggest things that's going to, and the number, especially how many channels of wireless, I would take a look at those. Okay. What's the best way to sync time code between an FS7 and a MixPre 2? I have not worked with the FS7 before. I assume it has a time code input. So the best way, from my point of view, would be to use external timecode generators. So something like a Tentacle Sync or a Timecode Systems UltraSync 1. The MixPre 2 has an inbuilt timecode generator, so you won't need one for that technically. But if you want to take advantage of the Timecode Systems wireless, the wireless system, which is pretty cool, what it does is basically if you have 2 UltraSync 1s, for example, one of them is constantly transmitting time code to the other one so they don't drift out of sync from one another. Pretty cool feature. If you do that, if you want to use that functionality, then you will have to have 2, one for the MixPre and one for the FS7. The FS7 can work with any timecode generator. I just don't know if it has a timecode input. I think it does. If it does not, then you would feed the timecode into one of the audio inputs, and then you'd have to use an app in post to convert the timecode that was recorded to an audio channel into metadata. But my thinking is either one Tentacle Sync or 2 UltraSync 1s if you want to use the wireless, or you could get away with just one UltraSync 1, jam sync that to your MixPre, and then connect it and leave it connected to the FS7 through the duration of the shoot. So that's probably the easiest way to be a Tentacle Sync. Just one. Okay. All right. Good. How are we doing on time? We have a few more minutes here. I thank you for the super chat for the U67 fund. We're going to, I guess I have a question for Vincent and the rest of you watching here today. I'm curious, should the U67 be at the top of our list, or perhaps a U87, or maybe one of the reissued U47s? I'm open. You just tell me. All right. Let's see what we have coming up here. We have. I think we're going to look at bringing in some more guests in the coming weeks here. I think it's a lot of fun for me to talk, but it's even more fun when I have someone else on that we can talk with. So we will be doing that here in the next little bit. Looks like we have another question that came in from Alejandro. I'm getting the Rock and Roller RT12 cart. What do you recommend for a shelf? I want some type of shelving that would be a place to set the RF control. Okay. I also have one of the Rock and Roller carts that I use when I have to schlep stuff over to the office. And the company makes their own shelf, at least for the kit I have. I don't remember exactly which one I have. I know it's a stealth model, so it's all black. And I don't remember if it was the RT12 or a different one. But there is a shelf you can buy for it from the same company. It was okay. Some people complained about it because it's pretty rough. It's not super elegant in terms of the build materials, but it gets the job done. Mine actually was in pretty good shape when it arrived. Some people complained that theirs arrived and it was pretty beat up. So that's what I've been using as a shelf, and it's been working fine. And so I guess that's that's my experience. So hopefully that's helpful for you there, Alejandro. All right, Rob. Rob has a little note here he wants to share with us. I'm not sure any of the U series are good value for money. And then also Lloyd votes for the M150 and votes no for the U67 and the U87. All right. Fair points. Fair points. I'll take a look at all of them here. Okay, can you go ahead and put up send colors comment here? So our Bluetooth headphones, excuse me, our Bluetooth headphones advanced enough to edit with them. What's your take on them? I have not used them, so I don't use them for my own editing, and here's why. The challenge with Bluetooth typically, and I think that the AirPods, the AirPod Pro or whatever, the newest ones, are the lowest latency Bluetooth headphones that I've heard of. Maybe there's, I don't know. It's not a world I keep up with, but latency is the biggest concern I would have about Bluetooth headphones. And the reason I say that is that it's concerning from the standpoint that you would not be able to judge sync with those because you're automatically already off by some amount of time. So that would be my biggest concern about those. So be careful. I mean, if you're positive you have sync and you're okay with a little bit of latency and it'll be a little out of sync with the video while you're editing and you're not going to go crazy from that, I guess you could get it done in a pinch with something like that, but it wouldn't be my first choice. So. And then it is, Archie here says, for example, there's also a concern about loss of quality. Yeah, there's that as well. So, okay. We had some additional thoughts here in regards to oh no, we're actually good at the M150. So M150 gets a vote. So we have a fund for a Neumann M150, just so everybody knows. Okay. Yeah, there's been some other comments here in regards to latency, loss of quality. No Bluetooth headphone I have heard is trustworthy and wired is the way to go. One of the best guests to have on is Paul from Sound Devices. He's always clear, concise, fun to listen to, and very knowledgeable on Sound Devices products. Thanks, UK Media. We have actually had him on once before. And maybe they have a new product coming. I don't know. I have no idea. Or maybe he could come on and talk about Noise Assist if you guys want. I don't know. We could probably convince him. We could probably twist his arm. We'll have to find a topic to do that. He'd be a great one as well. All right. Archie says, you have that one there? The very last one? Archie says, I would love for you to do a review on Genelec near-field monitors that are used for mastering. Ooh, I would too. The trick I have on that front is that I'm invested in the Focal system. So I've heard Genelecs on not showroom floors, but on exhibition room floors or exhibition floors. And it's really hard to make a judgment on those. But when I heard them at NAB, they were really impressive sounding. So Genelecs, yeah, not a bad choice. Alex has a question there. Alex D. Can you review Geffel M930? Thanks. Whew. I would love to. I would love to review all the microphones, my friends. I would. But the budget is the main thing that gets in the way. And the Geffels, I think, is a little bit on the pricey side, if I'm not mistaken. But if we get the opportunity maybe to borrow one or anything along those lines, we will definitely, I promise you, take advantage of that. And then Daniel says $6,200 for a Neumann M150 means lots more super funds are needed. That would be the most expensive microphone that it wouldn't be the most expensive microphone that I've ever had an opportunity to work with. Actually, Kerry, my brother, when he was in a recording studio once, he was using a tube mic. I don't remember which one it was, but it was about a $20,000 mic. It sounded good, but there are lots of others that sound good too. All right, whoops. Is Noise Assist plugin available for all Sound Devices recorders? I think, no, it's not available for all. It is available for the 8 series. So that's going to be Scorpio 888 and 833. It is also available for the MixPre 2 series, but it is not available for any of the others as far as I'm aware. So that's the latest info on that, I believe. Okay. When I get my sound bag with a MixPre 6.2 to start, I'm enrolling in your courses to learn. Happy learning. Thanks. Yes, I hope that the course works well for you and gets you all oriented and up and running quickly. So that if you were asking about the sound bag, if it's going to be based on a MixPre 6.2, then yes, you can get away with a lot less than the $15,000 I was quoting before. And it depends on the wireless system you go with as well. But if it's a MixPre 6.2, that's going to be what, a $900? I think it's around $950. I don't remember. I haven't kept up on the price on that. But the bag is another $300 probably, and then all the wireless, you probably are going to invest in some means of powering things. So with the MixPre 6, that's probably going to be you're either going to want the battery sled with a Hiroshi input on it, and then you're going to want a battery distribution system. Anyway, the guys at True Audio will walk you through all your different options. They're very capable. I would definitely trust them. What I would get a good handle on for yourself, though, is a very clear understanding of what you really need, because you can spend tens of thousands of dollars equipping yourself for the eventual time when you roll up on set for the next, season 3 of The Mandalorian or something. I don't know. And Archie, he asks here, are 2 Electrosonics good to start with? Start and work for the long term? Absolutely, yes. That would be a very good choice. Now, it's going to set you back a pretty penny, but it would definitely be a good investment. And you can sell those if you don't end up needing them in the long run. So it's a pretty safe investment. All right, we are running a little over time here, so we need to wrap things up. I wanted to say thanks to everybody for joining us today. Thank you so much for your questions. And we'll encourage you to get out there, make some great sound, and we will talk to you again next week. Take care, everybody.